Welcome to the program as we're live each and every day at 10 o'clock on YouTube and then wherever you podcast. So you can check us out on any of the Apple podcast channels, Spotify, wherever you may be. So we appreciate you online now. Go ahead and click the like and subscribe button as we've got a lot to get to on the program today. And Wednesdays mean Jimmy Hyams, who we absolutely love visiting with Jimmy Hyams. So now instead of his usual time, which is right off the top, he will join us in hour number 2. But listen, when you're a Hall of Famer like Jimmy, you make exceptions. So he can move wherever he wants to move. And we're looking forward to that visit for 2 reasons. He wrote a fantastic column that's on Off the Hook Sports. Can the 2025 Vols match their 2024 season as constructed right now? We've still got a couple of weeks of the transfer portal, which, by the way, could change. We'll dive into that. Also, we'll get Jimmy's thoughts on what do the Vols need to be a Final Four team. He still thinks it's possible. I'm a little bit more hesitant than maybe Jimmy, maybe Caleb. We'll get into that. Stat of the day. Also, we'll have the This Day in Tennessee Sports History, which we always enjoy. But we'll begin it with 4 Downs. 4 Downs brought to you by Banks & Jones. Today, I can't tell you how special that guy is. Maybe we'll get into it one day. Hit the like and subscribe button. Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. So let's play 4 Downs here right off the top. And let's start with Tennessee losing a commitment to Oregon. And I think it's important to note who they lost to Oregon. Tell me who they lost, because this is not the typical type of player that Tennessee would have lost.
Yes, so USC offensive lineman Emmanuel Pregnon transferred to Oregon. Tennessee was targeting him heavily because, as we know, they are lacking in the interior of the offensive line with Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins gone, and we don't know what's going to happen with Andre Carrick, who's still fighting for a year of eligibility. So they were very much in the running for him. They were trying to land him, and he ended up transferring to Oregon, which was a major blow. And this follows, by the way, another offensive guard, Josh Thompson, who transferred to – he was a Northwestern transfer, by the way, and he ended up transferring to LSU 2 weeks ago. So that's 2 offensive guards Tennessee targeted heavily that they lost out on. Not to mention Zacharias Branch, the Georgia transfer wide receiver that they went after that they didn't land. And everybody's going to point out that they did get Amari Jefferson, but we had Amari Jefferson on last week. And Dave, let's be honest, there wasn't anything special about what Tennessee was doing to land Amari Jefferson. It was just with him not wanting to go to Alabama, Tennessee was his default school always. So I don't really – sorry, what were we going to say?
No, go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry. I was going to add something to your point, but go right ahead.
Yeah, so I don't – with that in mind, it's hard to say Tennessee has been impressive at all in the transfer portal this year. Their only actual pickup outside of a guy who they, again, were a default school to land was Wendell Moe Jr., good pickup, solid pickup out of Arizona, does fill a void. But as of right now, they're significantly lacking, and they are taking a lot more blows than they typically take in the transfer portal.
I'm not crazy about the kid out of Arizona. He only, I think, started 3 games and played in a few. And listen, if you do that in the Big Ten or the SEC your freshman year, that's not bad. And it's, somewhat kind of respectable. Actually, if you start 3 games, would you agree? As an average player steps into the SEC, true freshman, if he plays at all on the offensive line, I think he's pretty good. I got respect for him, but I don't feel the same way when you're playing for the Pac-18 or the Pac-6 or whatever it may be that particular year.
Well, he only played 3 games this past year. As a freshman, he started almost every game, and he was all Pac-12 freshman. So we have to be fair to him on that.
What happened last year? I mean,
coaching change, system change, a lot of things could have gone wrong with that. Misuse of talent. Tennessee fans know firsthand players who are misused and then go and shine elsewhere because they were grossly misused at Tennessee.
Okay. I'm not judging him. I think you would agree it doesn't leap off the page, certainly like Amari Jefferson, where you say, wow, they killed it.
No, that's very true. You're right. They absolutely destroyed it, and with Amari. But again, there was nothing impressive. So losing out on Emmanuel Pregnon, I mean, look, this is an issue. There's a silver lining to this issue, I will say, which is that maybe Josh Heupel needs to stop focusing so heavily on the portal and focus more on developing the players that he actually recruited out of high school on the offensive line. Because
what did I tell you last year before the 2024 season when I was talking to someone with knowledge of Tennessee in Tennessee's football office and with great knowledge of the offensive line? I was told everything's good for 2024. Now, that wasn't the case because of injuries, and Lance Hurd wasn't probably as developed as we thought. John Campbell had an injury that he had to deal with too. So I'm willing to give him a bit of a pass on that. But I was told 2025, that could be the problem, was the exact quote. Do you remember me telling you that in August 2024?
Yes, you did. As a matter of fact, you randomly called me. This was actually a year before that, funny enough, going into after the 2022 season. And you called me, you were basically like, yeah, this guy's telling me that, like, I know that, like, what they're doing is not sustainable. And you were referring exactly to that.
That's right. Like I said, you're not going to step in and be a starter most of the time out of year one. But year two, you better be a contributor. Year three, you better be a starter, or you were misevaluated, and Tennessee or any other school did not appropriately get the right prospect for that position. Now, it was different before NIL at Alabama. There were five-star offensive and defensive linemen that sat the bench that could have played at other schools, right? So we're talking about now. We're not talking about how Alabama went 3 deep. So 4 downs. Why is this happening? And it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Here we go. Here's why the Vols might be struggling in the transfer portal. And I think we pretty much got it nailed down. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. All right, it's on our poll question. How worried it's misspelled. How worried are you about Vols' recent losses in transfer portal? We got very 50%, a little 35%, not at all 15%. Please pardon me on the misspelling. So let's go to first down. I have a new piece of equipment that I'm trying to get to work, and it's got all the Cooper drops on it and everything else. We'll have it tomorrow, but good gracious, I just can't figure it out. I'm not a tech guy. So let's do this. Cooper, what down? Tennessee center, Cooper base here. First down. Cooper, is it lack of NIL funds?
So I wouldn't have thought this early, but then I learned about from Will West last week about how Tennessee had to shell out more than they thought to keep Nico Iamaleava and then Mike Matthews.
And the other thing he said too that I didn't write about just because I still plan to, is the fact that Tennessee's policy is get on campus, then you get offered. Whereas a 5-star from California calls Michigan, they say, you got X right now. Hope to see you soon. That's a much different approach. I actually like Tennessee's more. I think it's more prudent, but I don't know that it's going to be as effective as the other.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I land. I'm not sure how effective it's going to be, but you're right. And that's a big thing. And so I wonder if shelling out more for a couple of players depleted their budget a little bit. Plus their NIL strategy on how they do things. Plus, I wonder if they front loaded a lot of NIL with the hope that they could maybe make a splash and win a national title, and then they could get money on the back end from that. And that didn't come to fruition in 2024. So I think there's also the issue of, donors maybe drying up their funds a little bit, being like, how many checks do you expect me to write to see this team just go 10-3 and get bounced out in the first round of the college football playoff?
I think it's that, and I think Tennessee went through what any other team would go through, Caleb, with a new coach and being a traditional program and I think there's about 25 of those or so. And I think that when you're new and hot in recruiting, that means something. It shouldn't. I mean, it absolutely shouldn't. Listen, I want to write a book one day, and it's called Getting Your Kid a High School Scholarship for Dummies. That shouldn't matter, but unfortunately it does. When you're hot, it's pretty obvious. Tennessee was really hot in 22, 23. I think now they're just another school that you have a good feel for. So while there's optimism, there's not wild optimism.
How?
And that comes down to, I mean, let's face it. Did Brew McCoy is on some, he's on some billboards about metal roofs. At the end of the day, how many metal roofs sold because of Brew McCoy? Or was it just the association with him that some Tennessee fan that owned that metal roof company wanted to be a part of? Well, at some point you say that money invested did not have a return. So I don't know that it's lack of NIL funds, maybe leveling of NIL funds. Is that fair?
No, I agree. That's totally fair. And it's funny you talk about that with programs being hot, because how many coaches have we covered throughout history, Dave, that their first year at a blue blood school, they're trying to rebuild. They maybe go 6-6, 7-6, and they sell that they're a program on the rise. And then they win over the fan base with multiple top 10 classes back to back. And then about like 3 years later, they're fired. Anyway, happens all the time, right?
It does. It does.
And you're right. It's very easy to be the hot coach when you're your first year at a program. And there's not a lot of negatives on you yet.
Yep. Totally agree. All right, Coop, what down is next? Tennessee Senator Cooper Mays here. Second down. We kind of touched base on this. Tennessee isn't as sexy of a place anymore. Listen, when you're averaging 1,500 points a game as they were in 2022, and you can check my math on that. I'm pretty sure I'm right. It was 1,500 points a game. When you're doing that, you've got a young coach. You've got this culture. Everybody's getting along. Everything's great. There is no arguing that Tennessee is as sexy as they were after the 2022 season. I mean, if they were Cindy Crawford coming off that season, they're Alyssa Milano now. How about that? Do you like that comparison?
Okay.
Alyssa Milano is she was in her prime. She was a good looking lady, but she was not Cindy Crawford. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Here is, I agree, but here's what throws me off about it. So there is sexy in the face, and then there's sexy in the curves. And I say a good running football. Hold on, here where I'm going with this. See, and it's actually a great analogy. Good running football teams that win the trenches, that's sexy in the curves. That's
right. That's the girl who she's maybe a little bit more conservative. She is big into church. She doesn't drink, and then that offense that they had in 2022, that's the wild woman you want to go party with.
Yes, but the other one, the girl with the curves, and I mean, with the body figure, once you get her in the bed, never mind. Okay, so anyway,
no. It sounds like our guy Caleb is about to have another kid.
I'm just saying. There's hot on the surface, and then there's hot beyond the surface. And the running game is hot beyond the surface. And what I'm trying to say is the running game for Tennessee was so good last year. You thought the offensive guards were the I like big butts people. Okay, you didn't think they were the flashy hot face at the bar. You thought they were, look at the backside. Yes. And so I would have thought
Anaconda. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly.
Don't say that. I'm sorry. I went too far.
I didn't say it. I didn't go there. I would have thought that Tennessee as a running team this past year would have been sexy for an offensive guard, but they're missing out on interior offensive linemen, which is throwing me off a lot, to be honest. Because if you were an offensive guard, you just saw what Dylan Sampson did, Dave, wouldn't you want to go play for Tennessee?
Yeah. Well, I would, but I think they'd rather have 3 very good receivers than even an elite running back, right?
Oh, I think so too.
Okay.
I think. I mean, I would too, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In this offense, especially, if you're doing some of the stuff Penn State's doing, maybe not. Dylan brings up a good point, which ties into first down. Cooper Mays first down. Truth is, we need about 10 more Jimmy Haslam's. Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. I mean, I wrote the column on it, and for those that didn't know, and this is not an exact way to track NIL money, but Ohio State's annual budget is $250 million. Tennessee's is $150 million. So there's not a direct correlation, but I think it's pretty obvious. If you've got more boosters giving more money, you're making more money that you're going to be able to get more players through NIL. All right, what down's next, Coop? Honestly, Senator Cooper Mays here, third down. Thank you again. I will get my soundboard working by tomorrow. There's not really a significant interest from the coaches as they'd prefer to build from within. This one's interesting because if so, this will either be the reason that Josh Heupel has success and everything's copacetic and he leaves on good terms. If this doesn't work, Tennessee could crater, because what happens if you want to build from within, if you want to go through the high school ranks and they get good and as juniors they transfer? This to me is the one I'm least sure of, but I'm most sure that it could be a make or break type of situation. I remind everyone that we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studios. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. So, Caleb, let me ask you this. You want to comment on third down first?
Yeah. So I wanted to the reason I said this is because of what we were told last week with Will West, which is that they don't promise NIL on the front and they want to get you to campus. That gives me a vibe, and I've heard this from a lot of people, that the way Tennessee approaches NIL is they think the back end after you're here more than any other program in the country. That's what they really think about. And that would lead to a vibe of, you've always talked to me about culture, Dave, with what Heupel builds. What if there is this philosophy? What if Tennessee is seeing this philosophy of, look, we may not always have the most talented team, but in an era of the transfer portal where players are moving around so much, if we keep our core together year in and year out, we'll have certain chemistry advantages over other programs that help us win. I mean, it's very much a basketball approach. I've never really seen it work in football that way, but you've seen basketball teams, Dave, that were not as talented but worked well together. I mean, the bad boy Pistons weren't as talented as the Celtics, Lakers, or Bulls, but they won 2 titles because they were so close and played so well together. And
but probably more talent than you give them credit for. I mean, Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, that was one of the best backcourts I've ever seen, especially since Dumars could early on, not in the third year that they played in the playoffs, but he was, I don't know if you remember, but there was a Sports Illustrated picture of him with his hand against Michael Jordan's head because he was considered the Jordan stopper.
Oh, okay. I don't
know if you know that, but Jordan decided to develop an outside jump shot, and that's when Joe Dumars suddenly looked like a second level player. All right, Coop, final down. Cooper Mays here, all SC Center, fourth down. They'll be fine. Their work in the portal isn't done. So that is our poll question right now. Vols' biggest problem in transfer portal, not spending enough cash. Vols aren't as sexy. Vols want to build within. They're just fine. I'm going to tell you, they're not just fine. I think it's as simple as the cash. I think they're reeling that in a little bit. And I think other schools with some excitement around them, either schools that win championships or in the playoffs and deep into the playoffs, and they make more revenue because of that, or they have more revenue from boosters because somebody's trying to rebuild a program. I'm having trouble coming up with an example right off the top of my head. North Carolina might be a good example with Bill Belichick. We'll see what they can spend. But if I had to rank the 4, I would say not spending enough cash, which may not be the right move. The close second, Vols aren't as sexy, and Vols want to build within would be third. They're not just fine. I'm eliminating that one right now.
Yeah, I would eliminate just fine too. Now, to be fair, not spending enough cash and want to build from within could actually be linked. to a certain degree. Maybe they're saying, let's not spend enough cash in the portal. Let's focus on building from within. But you are right. I think that I think that if it's where I am, I'm going not spending enough cash. And I think they're not spending enough cash because they had to open up the checkbook to get Nico and Mike Matthews to return, at which point we sit there and say, and maybe Dave, you're right. I don't think Heupel's system is predicated on quarterbacks as I once thought. It's more predicated on the receivers getting open. If they had to spend too much on Nico, maybe they should have let him walk.
I told you last year that Gaston Moore would have kept his head above water. I didn't say he'd star, but I believe that, yes, it depends on the offense. Now, I thought the receivers were going to play better. So at the end of the day, with their injuries, they probably would have undermined him. Man, I'm so excited to do business both with Off the Hook Sports and Ted Russell Ford Lincoln because I've wanted a Bronco, and they've got it all. Now, they've got new and used vehicles. I'm going to go with the used, and you got to talk to Andy and Nick White. They've got me covered. I'm just deciding on what Bronco trim I want. That's what I'm doing. They're at Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. If you want to stop at lot after lot and waste your time, you can. But I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, when it comes to selection, they're East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. And whether it's partnering with local businesses or sending someone home in their first car, Ted Russell Ford Lincoln loves to be a part of special moments in East Tennessee. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. Do yourself a favor. If you want a fantastic vehicle, just start TedRussellFord.com, .net, or TedRussellLincoln.net. Check them out. They've got the quick lane afternoon walk-in at either of their locations and parts for the do-it-yourselfers. But I just can't begin to tell you how impressed I was just beginning the buying process at Ted Russell Ford. I went to Ted Russell Ford, Ted Russell Lincoln. You can go there as well. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking maybe a Lincoln because I get this a lot, Caleb. I don't know about you, but I get you look a little bit like Matthew McConaughey.
I've never gotten Matthew McConaughey.
You've never, for me, you don't see Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, with you. Oh, okay. All right.
Not you. We had some people making fun of you. I don't want to bring it up on the message board and how you look. Hit the like and subscribe button. Blind Squirrel, we're definitely getting the basketball tonight. We've got a huge show lined up, so don't worry about that. We'll do some hoops for you here in just a second. I want to remind you, Chattanooga Mortgage, congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage, chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com. Now, it's time to bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank. Commercial Bank, member FDIC, Life Made Better, CBTN.com. All right, you're telling me, and when I heard you say this, it was a head scratcher. Absolute head scratcher. I was stunned that you brought this up. You think Tennessee is ahead of the curve with its 12 personnel? Are you saying it's ahead of the curve like in 2022? Or are you saying they're just kind of staying ahead of the pack? Because those are two different things.
I think it can be ahead of the curve by staying ahead of the pack to keep this offense running if they get the right receivers, which is a question. Now, let me break down why. I was thinking about this recently. Dave, in the NFL, if you watch it, a lot of teams that are run-oriented, that rely on the play action, some of their biggest deep balls, they always have an extra blocker behind, right? And then they hit a guy deep for a touchdown consistently. I mean, didn't your Cowboys always have an extra blocker whenever they play action with Emmitt Smith back in the day?
They ran a lot of two. They ran a lot of 3 wide with Kelvin Martin, Alvin Harper, and Michael Irvin, and then your tight end was oh my gosh.
But they also ran a standard.
It was the kid the guy who's a Cowboy in Wyoming now, Jay Novacek. I'm sorry. So that was their base personnel. They didn't get out of that a lot but
they also ran a standard I formation, right?
I mean, they were always in I formation, yeah, with Daryl Johnston. So that's what they ran most of the time with. Well, no, they would let me take that back. I'm sorry. Jay Novacek would come out and they would bring Kelvin Martin in and run 3 wide. So I don't remember them ever running 2 tights, but nevertheless.
I'm not saying just 2 tight ends. I'm saying 1 tight end and a fullback or 2 tight ends. And I
don't know, a fullback and an H-back and a tight end. You learn one of those roles, you can pretty
kind of interchangeable
play all 3. They're pretty significant.
Yeah. A fullback's basically a running back who leans more blocking, and a tight end's basically a wide receiver who leans more blocking. So it's like that's the way I always looked at it in my head. The reason I bring that
a little bit more complicated because you got to shift where you're attacking. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because of the way Hypo uses the wide splits. If you have fast enough receivers and you run 2 tight ends, which, yes, admittedly, would only give you 2 receivers on the outside, I would venture to say, Dave, that you could probably, by working the field the way you do, you could probably scheme a receiver open in time with an extra blocker. And I don't know if that's what they were trying to do last year and just nobody got open. But if you run 12 personnel and have that extra blocker, and teams are still respecting the run game, which they have to win this offense, Mike Matthews does have speed. And you're telling me on the outside that he's not eventually going to get open with that extra couple of seconds because of the extra blocker?
You certainly think so.
So is 12 personnel the way to reopen up the deep passes that were there in 2022? I guess is the question I'm asking.
Game No Bueno read my mind. Tempo I formation would be a nice change. And he's got an LOL. Maybe he's joking, but I think the fullback at some point is coming back. I do. I mean, I just think it's a matter of time. I think the 4-3 is going to come back. We're seeing all these hybrid stuff. I mean, it's cyclical, guys. I've been through about 4 or 5 of these cycles in my life. Caleb's not that old. Good for Caleb, but I'm just telling you, it always comes around. So give me your bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank.
If Tennessee commits...
No, you can't if. A bank on it, you got to tell me a statement.
Tennessee's deep ball will return next year by use of 12 personnel.
I thought you were going to say they were ahead of the curve with 12 personnel.
Fine. Tennessee's ahead of the curve with 12 personnel.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why it was crazy. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
Okay, I got to be honest with you, and I love you. Other than you suggesting throwing games, this is the craziest thing that you have ever seen. 12 personnel, it may evolve one day into being more of a mainstay, but that's just slower people on the field. That's not the way football is played nowadays. And Caleb, they play 12 personnel out of pure desperation. And I bet you it griped Josh Heupel every time he had to play it. He's like, why is Nico not ready to get the ball out fast enough and I have to protect him? Why are these 2 tight ends hurt? Why are the receivers not getting open fast enough? They're not ahead of the curve. They're not necessarily behind it. They did what they had to do to get by. At the end of the day, when it comes to Josh Heupel's offensive progression, if it continues to progress, this to me is a blip on the radar in 2024 was that I'm really not going to judge him much. Now, I'll judge him on last year because I didn't think Joe Milton was the guy. I'll judge him in year number 1 because he started Joe Milton, and that wasn't the guy. 2022, he gets an A+++. But no, they're not. Caleb, they're not ahead of the curve. They're trying to keep their head above water, buddy.
Well, you said other than throwing games, this was the craziest thing. But Penn State and Texas both lost their conference title games, and they got further in the college football playoff than the teams that beat them. So, there's that.
I'm just telling you. Okay.
Ohio State missed out on the Big Ten title game by losing to Michigan.
You're never going to purposely drop a game.
Ohio State missed out on the title game by losing to Michigan, and now they're in the national title game. Okay. So Notre Dame lost to Notre Dame. I'm just saying.
I ran this by somebody actually in Tennessee's football department. They said in football you can't do that. You lose an edge, and that's what I believe as well. But we can agree to disagree.
Whatever. Okay, I think I was right. Rick Barnes through the SEC tournament took Tennessee for as far as they've ever gone in the NCAA tournament last year. Anyways, to the point of
coincidences.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them. Now, here's where they'll be ahead of the curve with 12 personnel, and you just said it. The fullback, make it a comeback. And this is what I would advise Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley to do. Take one of your tight ends, start lining them up at fullback. Because here's why, Dave. Teams are going to stake. They did, but they would only do it on certain goal line plays. No, I'm saying throughout the game, and here's why. Teams are staying committed to this 3-3-5, right?
Yes.
You get the running back behind the fullback, that's going to clear a hole for them every time because that's going to put the fullback one-on-one with one of those linebackers to block. That's an easy block for a tight end, right? If the tight end is in position to block the linebacker, they're winning that block every time. And that will clear. So basically, at that point, the offensive line has to block. You got 5 linemen that only have to block 3 defensive linemen and 1 linebacker. That's clearing the field for a running back in that situation. And so I think 12 personnel, I'm saying it in the sense of an extra a tight end and using a fullback at the same time. You all of a sudden could have the most dominant rushing attack in the SEC in 30 years at that point. And
I love you like a brother, but that's not going to happen. It would be like the NBA is going to turn into a game in which they just dump it in the post instead of shoot the three.
There is a market for doing that in the NBA.
What team is having success with that?
I think the team that does it will start to have success. Okay, there would be. I think everybody's obsessed with spacing now, and teams are too soft to defend an elite post game. You get if you had like a Parrish and McHale right now, nobody could stop them, Dave. Nobody.
Yeah. Our friends at Peak IV Hydration are in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live life to your fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. They bring you Jake Warren, who will join us from time to time to break down some ball. He's going to be playing that, AAFL or XFL or something. So we'll talk to him about that. He's not ready to give up football quite yet. And I say, hey, you're a young man. Keep it rolling. Why not? That is Bank on It, brought to you by our fantastic friends at Commercial Bank, who I talk with about every day. I probably drive them crazy, but love it. Absolutely love the personalized service. You have to check out Commercial Bank for all of your banking needs. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. It is banksandjones.com. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer off the hook sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Welcome back. We're represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. You have to play to win. Why settle? BanksandJones.com. T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln dealer. Praise all that's holy. There is an initiative to do something about faking injuries. Now, I want Caleb to explain this, and I'm going to explain to you why I don't like it and I don't think it'll work, but I have no better answer, and I think it's a big problem. I've thought about this for well over 3 years, and I can't come up with a good answer. But what new rule has been proposed, Caleb? And I want to hear this. And it's brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. So what is the rule proposal?
So this was at a conference on Monday at the Convention Center in Charlotte involving the American Football Coaches Association. The coaches came with a plan to propose, which was that any injured player would be sidelined the rest of the drive unless a team used a timeout to reinstate the player. A head coach fine, possibly tethered to a post-game review process, was discussed as well. In its very early stages, and it wasn't discussed at Tuesday's meeting. However, head coaches, and we're going to talk about some other things they voted for a change to, but this is one that they were very serious about. But there were some serious debates. Our old friend Billy Napier proposed no rule, just said maybe teams just need to stop faking injuries because, of their own, goodwill, they'll do that.
Here's my ultimate problem. I don't want kids that are legitimately, the difference between hurt and injured is hurt, you can still play. Injured, you can't play. But there are varying degrees, right? It's not black and white. Okay?
Correct.
I don't want a kid out there. This is my greatest fear. When you do something like this, it scares me that a player is going to say, man, if I go down with this knee injury, I'm not going to be able to play the rest of the game. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel stable, but this is the last drive and we don't have timeouts. And then I'm out. I mean, imagine if that were to happen to, one of the all-time great, let's say Al Wilson, when he, that Florida game in 98, there's a couple of drives. If they don't have Al Wilson, like 2 drives in particular, they lose that game. So that's the ultimate scary thing to me, to the point in which I understand that faking injuries affects the competitive nature of the game, but I want the players to be healthy. So given that, I'm going to say, no, don't do this, because guys are going to be injured and keep themselves out of the game. And right now they're told, Tennessee's players included, if you even think you might be injured, go down, and then we'll work all that out. So Caleb, that's my fear. That's my fear.
I understand your point, but at the same time, I mean, does this change anything from like what football used to be before tempo? I mean, players would always, like, if they didn't feel, if it was the last drive and they felt they could go, they were going to try to push themselves to go, weren't they? And I mean, like, typically if you went down because you actually were hurt and you really couldn't get up.
Yeah, and Tennessee's players too are, you know how guys used to run off and you could see that, oh, he's got a shoulder or a hand, but he's quickly off the field. Mm-hmm. Tennessee's players, and probably all players at all programs, are told no matter what the injury is, drop to the ground.
Yeah, they are.
And listen, they're legitimately injured. I don't think there's a lot of faking going on at Tennessee like there is at, say, Ole Miss. But yeah, that's what they're told is to go down. They all hate it because it makes their parents worry on watching it on TV.
And the other thing is, a lot of times players play hurt. They can hurt something. They don't even feel like they hurt something, and they're going to play through it. I think they do that anyway a lot of times, though. I mean, like, look, let's go back through history. Chuck Webb walked off the field on his career-ending injury. I mean,
I remember that.
Yeah, like, I don't think anybody in the stadium, I'm sure you were watching at the time, nobody thought he was done, right? When he walked off the field. And so...
No, it was weird as we heard it on the broadcast on the drive home. They assessed it really super quick. I remember that was really creepy. And I don't know, kind of put a dark pall on the entire day, which was a win over Pacific.
Yeah, it was win over Pacific. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I just don't like it. I think you're going to have players force themselves to go out there. You're setting a bad tone. You're setting a bad precedent that you should go out there because you're getting paid now and you should risk your body. Well, I'm sorry. I understand they're getting paid, and I understand that means max effort. And if you don't like that, go get paid somewhere else. But at 18, 19 years old, I don't think the average person has the maturity to decide, okay, I'm going to force it on this knee. I'm going to get something shot into it at halftime, and I'm going to force myself out on the field because I have this sponsorship that I just absolutely have to uphold.
But see, that already exists. That is totally separate from what's happening here, which is we're talking about within a drive. You go down on a drive. And Dave, I got to be honest, where I'm going to push back on you is, I mean, that's how players did it anyway for 120 years in football. You know, it's only recently where you're taught go down if you feel any sort of injury or hurt whatsoever. Up until that, you think most players, you think in the 90s, you think in 98, Al Wilson ever was wanting to be taken out of a game at all? I mean, Al Wilson was, I'm sorry?
I do not.
Yeah. So if he felt an injury, if he could actually play, he was going to push through it and he wasn't going to tell the coaches. For most of history, if you went down because you literally felt real pain and thought something was wrong. So what type of gap are we talking about here where we're only talking about a select few situations where a player feels pain but thinks they can go. But then what are the chances that the injury is that significant? I mean, that's a very small chance. What are the chances that you're only talking about a situation where a player has a significant injury, but it doesn't feel like a significant injury. It feels fine enough that they can still play through a drive. If it's significant, they're not going to be able to get up. And so, I mean, like that's kind of where I'm landing on this. So I don't know what the chances are. Maybe I'm missing something, but what are the chances that you have a significant injury and it doesn't feel like you have a significant injury?
Say that again.
What are the chances of you having a significant injury within a drive, but not feeling like you have a significant injury?
Well, that's tough to answer, Caleb, because I can tell you from slipping on the ice and separating my shoulder, it goes numb for about 2 or 3 minutes. And so, I mean, I couldn't have played through a separated shoulder because my arm was hanging off of my body. But I can certainly think that injuries like knees that get tweaked, they go numb pretty quick. I don't know if you suffered many significant injuries in that regard, but
yeah, but your knee is like hanging in a certain way where you wouldn't be able to stand up on it, right?
I don't know. I've seen some people accidentally play on a torn ACL. So I mean, I guess it just depends. Back to our poll question, if I may. Vols' biggest problem in transfer portal, not spending enough cash. Vols aren't as sexy. Vols want to build within. They're just fine. 57% say not spending up enough cash. So Vols not sexy, 26%. Vols want to build within 7%. They're just fine at 9%. But Caleb, let me ask you this. Do you like this rule? Is this the rule you would enact? How would you change it? Because I can't sign off on this one. I'm sorry. I think it's better for the competitive nature of the game. It's sad that we don't have enough integrity as a sports society to just do it the right way. But I can't roll with you on this one.
I like this rule. I think I think the risk is minimal. I think the risk of what you're talking about, the situation you're talking about, is minimal. I don't think there's a chance that someone has an injury that they can play through immediately after they feel it. I think they would have to go down. I think they would be carried off the field, or they wouldn't be able to play through it. I don't think there's any chance of them. If it's something that's going to re-injure them significantly, if it's that significant, they wouldn't be. I don't think they'd be able to stand up anyway. So I don't think they'd be able to try to force their way through it. So I like the rule, and I think let's talk about it. This is definitely everything we talked about with Tennessee's offense stalling last year. Have we ignored how many teams faked injuries on Tennessee last year and how much it slowed their tempo?
A lot.
I mean,
a lot. A lot. I want to get to this day in Tennessee sports history. Jimmy Hyams will join us here momentarily. Want to remind you that Quality Tire Pros is serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. Stop by and tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said hello. Coming up, we got a little bit of Jimmy Hyams. But what is this day in Tennessee sports history?
Today is the 15-year anniversary of one Derek Dooley being hired as Tennessee's head coach. And
Wow.
probably the most unhappy a fan base I've ever seen was about a hire being made. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not saying Derek Dooley deserved the job. He didn't. I am saying I think that he, in some ways, got a very short stick when he got hired at Tennessee, with everything that was happening at the program at the time. But he was not, make no mistake, he was not qualified to take that job at the time.
Well, Lord, I think you're being incredibly nice to him. A short stick. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, he was blessed to even get a job like Tennessee.
What I mean is that I think he took over a borderline impossible situation at Tennessee when he was hired. I think it was a really, really tough situation. You're taking over a program that's under NCAA investigation, that's got 2 years of attrition, whose boosters are totally split over whether or not to support you because they're mad about Fulmer being fired. You're about to, and at the same time, you're about to enter a period where the SEC is at its toughest ever. So, like in 2011, Tennessee may have played the toughest schedule in college football history that year, and so
it looks like we could have a transfer portal change, which I think would help Tennessee immensely. Again, we're broadcasting live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Hey Ted, it's time to save some cash for our New Year's Dash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All right, so another big talking point that is very important is I don't think that this NIL portal and the calendar is doing Tennessee any favors whatsoever. So it's hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. They're going to move cityheatandair.com. They're going to potentially eliminate the spring portal, the winter portal, and make it just 10 days in January. Now, we are just talking about the transfer portal. We're not talking about messing around with the early signing day. All right, so hot or cold, this helps the Vols to eliminate a winter portal. Hot or cold? Hot being yes, cold being no. Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning.
Well, winter and spring, by the way, because it would just be 10 days.
I'm going to start with just winter.
Winter, okay. Cold, because I think Tennessee needs the portal more than the other.
I disagree. I think it's super hot because they have to recruit so much out of state that it's tough to do that as much as, like, say, if you live in Miami or LA or Texas, it's tougher to do that during the season. So I think where it is now, I think the winter portal absolutely hurts the Vols. All right. So the next question, hot or cold? Hot, it would help the Vols if they eliminated this. Cold, it would have no effect or actually maybe even hurt the Vols. The winter portal, which is basically now.
Well, you just said the winter portal.
Well, no, I'm sorry. The winter portal. Okay. The spring portal, which is after spring practice. Excuse me.
Yes. I'm still cold. I think Tennessee needs the portal more than you do, but I'm still cold. And it's because of the way Josh Heupel doesn't evaluate talent while recruiting. So I'm going to go cold.
I'm cold on this, and here's why. I don't think it's fair for the player. I think if the player goes through spring practice and he realizes he's not going to play, he should be able to go. So for a totally different reason, Caleb, I'm going to say the opposite. I'm going to say that I'm cold on this, and it's because of the player.
Yeah. So we're saying it for different reasons, but we both agree it's cold. So, yeah. What do you make of my point, though, that because Josh Heupel misevaluates talent so badly on the recruiting trail, he needs the portal more than other coaches because he's not – my theory is he's not evaluating guys properly out of high school.
Well, you've said that before. I'm not willing to go down that road. It's kind of like sometimes if you're unsure what you're doing in sports, you look like you play with lack of effort because you're unsure. And I'm like, that guy's not trying hard. I don't know that Josh Heupel has had as many options in landing 5-star recruits, true chances to get those guys because it was a rebuilding program. Now, let's talk after this year. You may be right. Maybe he does misevaluate talent. Clearly, he's done so at the quarter position, but I'm not quite rolling on that level. So, are you hot or cold on just a 10-day portal, and that's it? That would be held in January. Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. Over 50 years in East Tennessee.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your best. That's a dope spot. All right. Hot or cold? What are your thoughts on just a 10-day portal? Sorry.
Jimmy
Hyams is going to join us a little bit later in the program than we thought, but the Hall of Famer will still be a part of the show. That's what I was confirming. Go ahead.
I'm hot on it overall. And I'm hot on it overall because I think it'll save Tennessee from itself, believe it or not, because I think, like I said, they will actually have to spend more time evaluating players. But I'm also hot on it because, Dave, I'll just say it. I'm hot on it for my own mental health. I don't have it in me to cover all of this stuff in December after the season ends, quite honestly. Like, I need college football to give me a break a little bit with all the new, like, you got the playoff, the portal, the coaching carousel, and the early signing period all in December.
Well, you can't continue to have the portal in December during the playoffs because just PR. Why does the NFL have the draft in April, have people reporting in May, have free agency? I mean, they've got something every month, right?
Yes, to keep themselves
relevant. Now, college football is trying to do that. That's why the SEC media days keep moving up and up and up. They're trying to have something in every month, so they're a year-round sport, which is a challenge for football because you only play 12-ish games and always have. But right now, they've got two of their most interesting things logged together in the same month.
Two? How about like 7?
Yeah, specifically with the transfer portal and the playoffs, it just you're wasting one of your greatest things. Move it to January. So January is your transfer portal recruiting month. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And also, the schedule releases in December. Why not put that in May after the spring games? You know what I mean? So here's my calendar day. Let's think about this. Coaching carousel, you can't change, right? That's happening in December because that's when coaches are going to get fired and hired because that's the end of the regular season. There's nothing you can do about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Coaching carousel in December, college football playoff in December. Fine. You're right. Portal in January. Signing day in February. And move it to late February. So, like, February is just a recruiting month. Wouldn't that be fair? Like, the end of February?
Yeah. So you would move signing day to the first week of March?
Last week of February.
Okay. It's funny you say that. I was kind of going to suggest that, Caleb. We may be spending too much time together.
Yeah. Spring practice in March and April, right? NFL draft in April, which is kind of college related. May, schedule release. Everybody does the schedule release. June, month off. The college football world gets a month off. How's that sound for June? And then July, media days. August, preseason. Then the season.
So you basically got 1 month that's off. Well, June wouldn't be off. That's camp time. Actually, I think you've laid out.
You talking about recruiting camps?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah. If you cover recruiting, you're not off on June. But I mean, like, I'm talking about from covering the actual teams.
I'm just talking about from generating interest. So,
oh yeah,
I think with the way you did, I think you actually did it perfect. January, transfer portal month. February, signing day, which would suddenly be more significant because kids typically go either early in December or they don't, or they just kind of bounce around and maybe don't go at all. So then you've got a little bit longer to go out and get guys. I like that. And then, so what would March be?
March would be just spring practice. You're covering spring practice.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. That usually bleeds over a little bit into April.
Mm-hmm. And then after it ends in April, you don't really do anything because the NFL draft is still college football related because you're covering your college teams in the NFL draft.
Okay, but I would have a spring portal for kids that showed up in spring practice and life wasn't good.
Okay, so, that's fair.
Yeah, I do want some sort of spring practice portal. So I'm not gonna go quite that far. So I think that I want a spring portal. So let's say that's May. June's football camps, July SEC media days.
May is also the schedule release. The schedule reveals in May.
Okay. I'm totally good with that. As a matter of fact, would you care to write a column about that? The show represented by Banks & Jones, or I will. Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. All righty. Now, I want to get to, is it this day in Tennessee sports history or the stat of the day? And why do I always confuse those?
Because I don't know. You just do.
Hosting's hard. All right. So what do we got?
All right. So the stat of the day, and this is
stat of the day brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
All right, stat of the day, Caleb, brought to you by Double D Piping. What do you got?
This is a Rick Barnes special stat for you because this literally is what Rick Barnes does, and it may be negative for you, but Tennessee is the 3rd worst team in the SEC in points per game this year right now. However, their margin of victory is the 3rd best in the SEC. Their defense is that good.
Interesting.
Yeah, they score 77.1 points a game, but they only give up 57.9 points a game.
Wow.
And by the way, the interesting thing about that is Georgia, who they play tonight, gives up 64.3 points a game. They're 2nd best in the SEC, and Georgia's 11th is in the bottom half in scoring. So this is going to be a whatever the over under is. Take the under in this game in basketball.
All right, coming up, we are going to get to Jimmy Hyams, who's going to move back a little bit later in the program, but he is going to join us. Jimmy's never late to anything, so this is like maybe the first time in 25 years, literally. Steve Spurrier won some college football games inside and only inside no weather elements. One to watch, Keyshawn Stansel, a prospect that I think Tennessee ends up landing. I'll go ahead and make that prediction, and I'll tell you why. With Jimmy, we want to talk about how the 2025 Vols match their 2024 season at this very point on the calendar. And then what do the Vols need to be a Final Four team? The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. It is banksandjones.com.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible. For camping, tailgating, the options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep boop beep bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300, or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
All right. We've got a little bit of Steve Spurrier to talk about, who I think is one of the smartest football minds walking the face of the earth. But I also tend to think that he says crazy stuff. So what did he say lately? Is the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. What do you got, Caleb? What's Steve Spurrier want to whine on and on about?
So this was on another duly noted podcast, which we've had Pat Dooley on in the past on our show. And Steve Spurrier was asked about one major change he would make to the college football playoff format. Now, you and I, Dave, we've talked about maybe make it 16 or reduce it to 8, maybe switch the seeding format, a bunch of different things. Nope, Spurrier wants to change the weather conditions. He says, quote, I'd also be in favor of playing some of those late games at an indoor stadium if you're going to play up north. Obviously, at Buffalo yesterday was 30 degrees, didn't bother anybody. But you could catch one of those, a windy, snowy day. But the weather didn't bother anybody yesterday, so it was pretty good. Spurrier's point is that he wants college football games played indoors, college football playoff games played indoors so as to avoid the cold weather. Now, I'm going to say up front.
So stupid.
I totally disagree with you. I think it's smart, but I'm going to say this up front. Before I get to my point, Spurrier's a raging hypocrite for saying this. Because to say they should be played indoors to avoid cold weather, fine. But he acts like it's not just as dangerous to play a game in Gainesville in early September in the afternoon in the insanely hot weather. Like that.
Okay. Here's kind of where we are. He likes throwing the football. it's tougher to throw the football in inclement weather. He coached primarily at Florida where he had success. The weather there is usually good. The bottom line is the average fan, not the 20. I think it's kind of like I think the country split up 20%. I think 20% are ardent football fans where if it's on, they're going to watch it. I think 20% don't care about it at all. And then I think you have your other 60% that are somewhere in between. That 60% loves seeing a game in 12 inches of snow. So you may like it, but do you really think it could happen? Because I think the TV executives would flip out. I think they would rather see a game decided by the weather because it's such a beautiful background and everybody gets excited than they would rather see a truly legit game inside without the weather. I think that's what goes through TV execs' minds. Do you think I'm crazy?
I think you're crazy. And I got proof. The Super Bowl has become the most watched event in America, and it's always played in a controlled climate. Always, always, always. Only one time has the Super Bowl not been in a controlled climate, and it was when Peyton Manning and the Colts won the Super Bowl, when it was in the rain in Miami. Nobody liked it, okay? The Super Bowl is America's most watched event, and they make sure it's a controlled climate every year. They make sure that thing never happens again. I am of the mindset, and you guys can debate me, I don't care. Football should be played 100% in controlled climates inside. Every stadium should have a roof. Every stadium should be a controlled climate. It is ridiculous that I want to see the best teams going at it. I don't want to see the weather altering games, particularly in the playoff when I'm watching the best teams go at it. I want to see the team win. Home field advantage does not mean home elements advantage. Okay.
What you just said, you don't want to see mental toughness win games.
Oh my gosh, stop that. No, that's not true.
It's absolutely true.
I don't want to see a high-powered offense that is entertaining, like a Josh Heupel offense that's all about tempo and entertainment. I don't want to see it stalled in December because they got to go play a snowy game. I've never liked it. I still maintain to this day, and Dave, you're a Cowboy fan. I know you weren't alive when this happened, but history. You know about the history of the Ice Bowl, right?
Yes, unfortunately I do. Thank you, Caleb. Why do you bring up every Cowboys loss?
Your Cowboys got robbed.
I know. You know they won 5 Super Bowls. Go ahead.
Your Cowboys got robbed in that game. That never should have happened. Green Bay should have been allowed to get home field advantage. But home field advantage does not mean the advantage to play in 20-degree below zero temperature where people died of frostbite and a ref's lips got stuck to the whistle so his lips ripped off when he pulled it. Okay? That's not what football's advantage should be. All right? The advantage should just be you get the home crowd. All of football should be played in a controlled climate. No one says basketball should be played outside. No one says, let's just let it rain on the basketball court, and let's watch them slip and maybe break their legs, and who cares? No one says that for hockey. No one says, let's open the arena and let it, snow on a hockey rink. No one says it for baseball. They do rain delays in baseball still. I can't believe they don't all play baseball games inside.
Is there any small part of you that when you saw that game in Buffalo with all the snow, didn't say to yourself, oh, this could be fun?
It could be fun to play in. It's not fun to watch with the best teams at the highest level. No, I didn't. I didn't think it could be fun. I like sitting inside in a controlled environment, watching teams play in a controlled environment, and I want to see the best. And I want to see the best of the best, and I don't want to see the elements ruin it. And anybody that's disagreeing with me on the message board, I'm going to ask you, Dave. Why don't they just play baseball games outside? Why do they delay baseball for the rain?
Because baseball players are soft.
Why do they play basketball games inside? Why don't they just let it rain on the court? Let him slip and slide. That'd be fun. Let him slip and slide.
No, that's different. You actually can't even. Did you know you can't even play basketball at night because of dew? No, you can't play on a wet court. That's not analogous at all.
Let it happen.
That's like saying you should go bowl on a football field. I mean, that just
do it. Why not? Why does the field why do field conditions matter? We always hear stuff about field conditions. What's the point of talking about field conditions if you're going to say it can be played in the snow or rain? No, I'm not a fan of it. And by the way, the other side of this too, I don't think, and I don't want to sound like, because Big Ten fans are going to come at me on this hard because the Big Ten is like hardcore, like, oh, we play in cold weather or whatever. I'm the same way with the Deep South too. I don't think games should be played outside in deep south tropical climates in early September when the temperature is 100 degrees and 120 degrees, and these guys got to put on full pads. That's even more dangerous. That's even more dangerous than the other way. Okay. I mean, like, it is honestly, Dave, it's also life-threatening. We don't talk about that.
Oh my Lord. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard. It's not life-threatening.
It's life-threatening.
Because you don't know this about me. I did not play in a high school band, but I did play trombone in middle school. And they asked me because they needed another trombonist to go up there and perform at halftime at the New England Patriots game. You didn't know this about me, did you?
I did not.
I was 12 years old. Now, I'm sorry. I was about 14 years old. And it was so cold that my trombone froze up in third position. It would not move. So I didn't play. I just stood there. Same for the rest of us. But the simple
and that's not
is,
good.
Okay, but I didn't put my instrument down and just walk off. I mean, I at least sat there and you can hear the percussion.
Good.
You hear the percussion and the woodwinds because they didn't freeze up, but all the brass instruments.
I can say this as a percussionist. I was a percussionist in my high school marching band. Okay, I played the quads. I'm going to say I didn't like being out there in cold weather, and I certainly didn't like being out there in rain because you know this, Dave, when you were in a band, like you had to like work to cover your instruments to make sure they weren't ruined in the rain when you weren't playing, and then you have to pull it off to play it again. I am sorry. And you know, Game No Bueno makes a point. Just a few segments ago, Dave was like, oh, you can't have a player play through a little minor tweak if they might be hurt because they can't do that. And now you're saying it's okay to play at 20 degree below zero weather or 120 degree temperatures. What's more dangerous? Okay, come on. Football should be football's the only sport where we expect players to do this. No other sport are players expected to play.
It's the toughest sport.
I want to see the toughness maxed out by the actual physical abilities, not impacted by the weather. I don't want the weather impacted by that.
Okay, now people are giving me a hard time, and you just did because I was talking about injuries. There's a difference between a serious injury like a joint injury that it could go numb and they could try to stay out there because they feel like they're going to be out the rest of the drive and it's first down on the opposing 8-yard line. There's a difference between that and a snow injury. A snow injury is usually a muscle pull like a groin or a hamstring. So don't go there, message board. That is totally unfair. Poll question, snow games are great. What up, Caleb? Awful. Right now, it's 4-1. 80% is absolutely.
No, snow games are not.
I see you posting, and I certainly appreciate it, brother. I know we talked in email. I'm getting your book in the mail today. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Caleb.
You guys are just wrong. Snow games are not great.
I love your retort when everybody disagrees with you. It's just you are wrong.
Yeah, because honestly, I'm sorry. I like games controlled and determined by the actual production on the field, not by the weather. Okay, I just don't like it. It's absolutely ridiculous. I've always hated it. Okay, and I think that, quite honestly, I think the snow, the flash of the snow, I think people get sucked in for a minute. But I actually think you guys who say snow games are great, I think you never stop to think about the fact that you're probably bored to tears watching snow games. You just think psychologically in your mind you've enjoyed it because you like the spectacle of seeing it. But actually watching the snow games are boring as heck. And then you retroactively tell yourself that they're good afterward. Kind of like this. And I've always said this. It's a psychological thing that people do. The Super Bowl, the 2007 Giants-Patriots Super Bowl, where the Giants upset the Patriots on the luckiest play ever. People tell themselves that was an exciting Super Bowl. No, it ended exciting. It was one of the most boring Super Bowls to watch from like start to finish. If you're watching it as a game, it was boring, okay? It's the same with snow games. The spectacle of the snow is fine. It's etched in your head, the spectacle of the snow. But as you're watching the game, you are bored out of your mind because you don't know who has the ball, you don't know who scored, and you're not watching good football.
I love you, but I think crazy. I mean, when does it stop? Do you have a Vanderbilt game with snow? So you say, no, it's too snowy. You can't play. I mean, I get right now we're limited to college football playoff, but that's going to be a slippery slope. And if referees start calling games due to snow, I'm going to be disgusted. By the way,
don't call games. Every game should be inside. Every single football stadium should be a dome, from high school to Little League to college to the NFL. I don't know why we don't play football games inside anymore. Like, why we don't just do that now? It's 2025, excuse me. All football should be indoors. All of it.
All right. Welcome to the craziest thing that Caleb's ever said, and that's saying something. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New News, East Tennessee's largest Ford Lincoln volume dealer, Kingston Pike and Parkside Drive. All right, stay tuned. We're going to talk a little hoops. We're going to talk a little bit of recruiting as well, as we will be right back. And then Jimmy Hyams, the Hall of Famer, will join us in a matter of moments. This is Off the Hook Sports.
Hey, Ted, it's time to save some cash during New Year's Dash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
Welcome back to the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We are live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, I got my own Bronco, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. My goodness. All right. I'm stumbling for some reason today. It is National Bagel Day. So bagel or donut, Caleb?
I'm going to feel so big back, but I'm going to say donut.
It's bagel. I just don't like sweets, but I do like bagels with cream cheese, and I love cream cheese. I hate the fact that I can't eat bread a lot because of some restrictions I have, because I like the cream cheese as much as I like the bagel, but I'm not going to sit there and eat cream cheese with a spoon out of the bowl itself.
I hate cream cheese. I despise it. I like butter.
I had oysters for the first time in a long time. Oysters on the half shell over the weekend. Do you like that?
I hate oysters too.
Oh,
I'm a picky eater.
Oh, picky eaters scare me. Do we want to go ahead and bring Jimmy Hyams in here? It's a little bit early, but all he does is make the show better. Jimmy, give me a thumbs up if you want to go ahead and jump in here. We'd love to have you. Oh, let's do that. So we'll get to Jimmy Hyams. There he is. I'll remind you again, we're broadcasting live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studios. Your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. I'm looking for a Bronco. I can be picky, so I'm going to wait. And Nick White is totally taking care of me. And I gave him an idea of what I wanted. I'm choosing the trim. So it's a fun time because there's no pressure. It's just absolutely fantastic. And whether partnering with a local business or sending someone home in their first car, Ted Russell Ford Lincoln loves to be a part of the special moments in East Tennessee. Every single day, they're there for you at 2 locations. They are on Parkside Drive, and you can check them out on Kingston Pike. Please tell them that Off the Hook Sports said hello. They're the exclusive vehicle provider and studio sponsor of Off the Hook Sports. Jimmy Hyams, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Dave. How are you doing?
Good. I have to go ahead and say this. Jimmy has, other than my 2, the cutest little grandson that is ever surfaced on Twitter. Like, I hope you had so much fun with him in the snow. I remember those days. I actually got a little depressed. I saw your tweet and I looked outside and we had all this beautiful snow and there were no kids' footprints in it. I was like, what's happened?
He enjoyed the snow. And in fact, he's a natural at snowball fights. His mom gave him a snowball. And he ran over to his dad and threw it over his head. So he picked up on snowball fighting really quickly, but he's been a joy. He's been a delight to my life. We babysit him twice a week, and he's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Just as long as the Hyams family didn't separate any shoulders like I did on the ice.
No, we did not. We were more careful.
Yeah. I got the brace on right now. I haven't told you the story yet, but I had them pop it in with no pain medicine. And I will say that the doctor said as I was leaving, because I leaned over to put my shoes on and it popped out again. So I had to have it popped in twice. And he goes, wow, you're one tough son of a. It was not fun.
So, Jimmy, since we're talking about, I'm sorry.
To which Squirrel White said, so what?
Well, I'll back Squirrel because I could not run right now if somebody paid me $1 million. It's the motion or so. It feels very unnatural. We're hoping that it's not absolutely terrible. Hey, before we move on, because I want to get to, of course, Jimmy's latest column, which is always gold, high heat, just absolutely magnificent. The comparison between our expectations now of the Vols as opposed to this time last year. Also, we're going to talk Tennessee's Tennessee's basketball team. What do they need to do to make the Final Four? That's a column that Jimmy's working on. But first, I want to discuss Tennessee deciding to hire Mike Keith. I wrote a column that I thought John Wilkerson should get the job because I didn't really think Mike Keith was approachable. There are only 32 of those jobs. I never thought he would come back. When did you start to get note of that? How monstrous of a great hire is it for the Ball Network and the University of Tennessee? Because I firmly believe that Mike, through all my travels, is there in the top 10 percentile of the higher probably in play-by-play guys in the nation.
Well, first off, I had actually I filled in for John Wilkerson late during the football season, and I endorsed him for the job. I thought he would do a great job. I still think he would have done a great job had he been hired. It was at a football game, the last home football game, that I talked to somebody that's close to Mike that told me that he would have an interest and that things aren't looking all that great with the Titans. I mean, what game would you rather call, the Titans or the Vols? So when I was told about that, I thought, okay. So I kind of stayed out of it because I'm a friend of Mike's and a friend of John's, and I thought I'm not going to get in the middle of all that. So I think Mike Keith is an excellent hire. They're going to redirect the responsibilities of that position. There'll be a greater presence on social media. They will have more interviews on social media. They're going to hit that pretty hard. And Mike will do a terrific job. Again, I think John would have too, but I think Mike will do a great job. He wanted the job very much so back in 1999 when they hired Bob Kessling. And so, but yeah, Mike he's already, from what I'm told, he went to work starting on Monday, kind of getting over there on campus and doing some things. He's got a media avail tonight, I understand. So, but I think it's a great hire for Tennessee, and I think Mike will do a wonderful job.
Jimmy
so,
and Dave.
Poll question I'm sorry, I'll let you jump in here, Caleb. Poll question we'll put up there because I don't think we've asked our fans, but I'm just curious where you stand. Hiring Mike Keith was awesome, fine, or would have hired someone else? I'll go ahead and say awesome, and I don't mean any disrespect to John because I did endorse him for the job, but I did not think that Mike Keith was available. I'm not comparing the two, but I understand going and getting Mike Keith. Caleb, you were going to say?
Yeah, and Jimmy, I just wanted to ask you about it because I was wondering this last week because I mean, like, I don't know what the pay is between covering the Vols and covering the Titans. I assumed it was better covering the Titans, but I also am like, his workload just doubled, didn't it, covering the Vols? Because he's now got to cover every Tennessee basketball game. So is it, I mean, and again, I know you didn't want to get involved, but I'm thinking, is it more just the passion he has for wanting to cover the Vols, or is it relative of how dysfunctional it is working in that Titans organization and office right now?
I think it's about being the voice of the Vols. I remember hearing the story when he was like probably a teenager, maybe a freshman or sophomore on campus, and he went over to visit with some of the folks in the video room, and they said, well, what are your goals? And he said, I want to be the voice of the Vols. That was what he said back then. And so he's always had a desire to do that. I thought he had a great career with the Titans. And I also think that Tennessee probably put a package together that would be similar to what he was making with the Titans. Now, and I think it's probably a considerably amount more than what Bob Kesson was making. I don't know that 100%. But you've also, as you mentioned, Caleb, you've added responsibilities to the table. Mike has never shied away from work. He's one of the hardest working guys I've ever met. So I don't think that was not going to be an obstacle for him. But I think they put the package together. It was attractive to him, and I think he's going to thoroughly enjoy however many years he does it. He's 58 years old. I'm sure he can give him at least 15 years, but I'm sure he's going to thoroughly enjoy the time of being the voice of the Vols.
And a couple of a little sports media history that people may not care about, but I'm just going to go ahead and share it. And then somebody asked me on the message board, why didn't you call games? I've called high school games. I think it's the most artistic, beautiful thing that you can do in broadcasting. But this guy named John Adams asked me to write for him, so that kind of sidetracked that. But anyway, for those that don't know, just an interesting piece of trivia. When Mike left for the Titans, it was Jimmy who was hired to replace him as the host of Sports Talk from the News Sentinel. And then shortly thereafter, it was Brent Hubbs who went to VolQuest, and I took Brent's job. So this all seems like just a couple of years ago, Jimmy, but I'm not going to actually date ourselves. It's been like a quarter of a century.
I thought it was in 2018.
I mean, I will tell this one little story if I may. I was done. I was way underpaid at my other job, and I still remember. I'm not going to give out his office number. I remember what number could this be? And I was in a production studio. They transferred it to me. It was Jimmy Hyams. I said, well, maybe I'll give it a little bit of a shot. So I did that. So thank you, Jim, or we wouldn't be right here, wherever we are.
Yeah, well, yeah, I remember that, and I remember going to meet with you and talking about the job and so forth. And you were natural, good on the radio, good voice, good reporter, and so yeah.
Well, I wasn't a good reporter until I spent 5 years with you. All right, so let's go ahead and get rolling. I learned more than I could ever share in just a 2-hour show. Not I would want to hear all that, but you wrote a fantastic column. Can the Vols match their 2024 season as currently constructed? Now, you got a couple more weeks of the transfer portal, but things ain't looking great. So, Jim, how do you view this team as opposed to the 2024 team just a year ago?
Well, and here's the thing, and the key part is as they are constructed now. So when I look at Tennessee's offense right now versus 2024, I don't think they're as good at receiver, right? They've lost 5 receivers and to the portal. One was a walk-on, I understand that. But they lost 5 receivers. They lost 2 seniors. I don't think they're as good on the offensive line because they're losing 4 starters. I don't think they're as good at running back because they're losing the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, Dylan Sampson. I think they will be better at quarterback because I think Nico will take that step. Now, on defense, you lost 5 or 6 really good defensive linemen. That's assuming James Pierce is going to turn pro. At linebacker, I think you're pretty average. You're not very good in pass coverage. You're better at tackling. Then the secondary, you're good at corner. You'll be as good or better at cornerback, but you're not that good at safety. So when I look at that and the sum of all this, they were better at position groups or players like Nico. I'm counting him as a player, not the position group of quarterback. I think they were better in 2024 than that roster that shapes up right now for 2025. And certainly people can argue with that, but I'm not sure what the argument would be with why you would think this roster right now is better than it was last year.
Jimmy, what do you make of the concept of, and I don't know how many teams you've covered where coaches were too loyal to seniority, so then once players left, they actually got better at a position. And I want to know if you think it's possible to make that, just to play devil's advocate, that receiver could be that situation where because Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton are gone, they'll be forced to be better at receiver because Mike Matthews will just be better than those guys. What is the possibility of that?
I think it's possible that Matthews could be better, but that's just one guy. What about your other receivers? And here's my problem with Tennessee and the receivers. With rare exception, a first-year receiver at Tennessee, whether it was a freshman or junior college player, is not productive. The best one that I can think of is Brew McCoy. He caught 52 passes. Javonte Payton came in and caught less than 20 passes.
Half of them were for touchdowns.
Half of them were for, yeah, that's about right. He had 6 touchdowns and I think 18 catches. But he wasn't a huge impact to me because he didn't catch many passes. Brazel caught 29 passes this year, I think. But I think that the receiver position is so complicated to play in this system because you're doing so much reading and you have to read and be on the same page as a quarterback. So it takes you longer, which is why I don't think Tennessee, I don't care how, Jeremiah Smith would not have done at Tennessee what he did at Ohio State. Neither would Ryan Williams at Alabama, in my opinion. There's not any evidence to support it. So do you need to change your system a little bit? Do you need to make it more receiver friendly? Yes. If you want production out of this group, yes. But I do think Matthews has a chance to be really good. Who else has a chance to be really good? Staley, we hadn't seen enough out of him. The freshman guys, hadn't seen enough out of them. Brazel, maybe he takes a big step. I don't know. I didn't see enough out of him to convince me that he will. So that's one of the things that I like this offense, and I think there are a lot of good things about it. But the ability for a first-year receiver to be productive is not one of them.
I want to talk some more positions. There's some breaking news out there that I want to address because it has to do with Tennessee's 2025 season and beyond. ESPN's Chris Lowe is reporting the Vols and Tim Banks, Tennessee's defensive coordinator, close to finalizing an extension for him to remain with the Vols as defensive coordinator. I've been told Clemson and Miami made a pretty significant run. Jimmy, this is big for Tennessee. I think the 3 most important coaches on Tennessee's staff, and I don't even think it's close, Rodney Garter, Tim Banks, Josh Hyde.
Yeah, and I think it's big that Banks stays. Look, their defense last year ranked in the top 5 in the SEC in like 5 different major categories in 2023. And then they were even better in 2024, whether it was points allowed, run defense, total defense, third down efficiency, tackles for loss. They were really good in those areas 2 years in a row. And now Banks had 2 bad games last year, Ohio State and Georgia. I didn't think he did a very good job in either one of those games. But I think he did a pretty dang good job in just about every other game that they had. And that's one reason they won 10 games. They didn't win 10 games without the defense playing at that level. So I think keeping Tim Banks is absolutely huge for the staff.
Jimmy, sticking on Tim Banks with that, looking at him as a whole, you brought up he had 2 bad games, Georgia and Ohio State. Those are also the 2 really only competent passing offenses Tennessee played last year. So
also the 2 most talented teams Tennessee played last year, Caleb. I don't know where you're going, but I think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and it seemed like I'm wondering one or two things. Was he just out-coached by Mike Bobo and Chip Kelly, or did we and he overestimate his defensive line because he didn't bring any pressure in those games at all, and the defensive line was not getting the pressure that they were getting on other teams throughout the year. So, did he misevaluate his defensive line, and is that a concern?
I don't. When you say misevaluate, you're talking about pass rush.
Yeah, I think he thought they were good enough to get pressure on good teams without a blitz.
Well, I did too, because I thought James Pierce was NFL caliber. I thought Joshua Joseph was really good. I thought Omar Norman-Lott was one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles Tennessee's had, one of the best in the SEC. So I thought just among that three that they would be able to get pressure without blitzing. And as it turned out against Georgia, they couldn't. As it turned out against Ohio State, they didn't. Now, I thought against Ohio State, they got soundly outcoached because Ohio State, here's my definition of that. If they keep running the same play and having success every time and you don't adjust, you got outcoached. So what did Tennessee do defensively whenever Ohio State ran a drag route with a receiver? They never defended it. What did they do when they had a running back just sneak out of the backfield and dump it off to him for an 8 or 10 yard game on 3rd and 6? They never defended it. That, to me, is getting out-coached. With Georgia, they didn't put pressure on Beck. Now, Beck was kind of interesting because going into that game, he had played poorly, well, between average and poorly for like 5 games in a row, right? And so, but I would have brought the heat on him. I didn't understand that. I don't know how accurate Pro Football Focus is, but they came out and said that Tennessee blitzed him 15 times. Boy, I don't know their definition of a blitz, but I would have said 5 or 6 is what I thought, just with a naked eye without charting it. So I didn't think Tennessee's game plan against him was very good. But see, here's my problem with that too, Caleb. You didn't get to him at all in the first half, so why don't you bring the heat in the second half? That's what bothers me. So that's why I think, in particular against Ohio State, but even Georgia, I thought they got out-coached a little bit.
I'll just go so far as to say that they completely screwed up James Pierce's season. I was told he had a serious personal issue that happened in the offseason, and that's why he got the slow start. But I thought that from a schematic standpoint, and maybe that was more of it, but from a schematic standpoint, he dropped into coverage way too often. Mm-hmm. I still don't understand, and Jimmy, maybe you can help me. Why in the world an edge rusher like James Pierce is ever in a 4-point stance? I've never seen, I can't remember a great edge rusher in a 4-point stance, and that seemed to be his go-to. That made no sense to me. I just feel like they missed out on James Pierce for whatever reason or what combinations of reasons. They just didn't get all they could out of him.
They didn't, and I don't know how much. Now, I'm particularly bothered by him being in pass coverage.
Yeah.
Why are you taking an elite pass rusher and putting him in pass coverage? If you want to do it a couple of times, but it looked like he was in pass coverage more than that to me. So why would you rob somebody of that skill? And now here's the other thing too. I have been told he's a bit of a head case. So some of that may fall on him, his motivation or whatever. But I didn't think Tennessee he was better in 2023 than he was in 2024, right? Look at his numbers. Look at the impact. Now, we'll say this. There were some games where I heard people say, boy, he was a no-show. He did nothing. Well, he drew 3 holding penalties. So I got to say, hey, he had some impact. So I can't just look at the stats and say, with a blanket comment, he did nothing or he did a lot less, because there were times. And if you can draw a double team from an offense to block you, then theoretically you're helping free somebody else. So you got to look at some of those nuances. But I do remember this: he missed about 5 or 6 sacks where he had the quarterback dead right and he just missed him. That's on him.
I agree. Yes. I wasn't told head case. I'll say this: when somebody comes to you though and says he really is a good kid, I promise, then you wonder if there's a head case going on, because you usually don't start when you ask about a guy and you say, well, first of all, he's a really good kid, despite what you may have heard. Go ahead, Caleb.
It's like when reminds me of when Kevin Garnett signed that record contract in '96 for Minnesota and said, "It's not about the money." Okay. Guys, what we're seeing though, I mean, we got to call this out. As good of a job as retaining Tim Banks did, I mean, I go back through the history of Tennessee defensive coordinators, and I can think of about like 4 or 5 that would have called a better game against Georgia or Ohio State than Tim Banks would have. Say what you want about Jeremy Pruitt. He'd have brought pressure. We know John Chavis did nothing but bring pressure all the time, 100% of the time. Justin Wilcox liked to bring pressure. Isn't this kind of a red flag that, I mean, I literally just reeled off 3 defensive coordinators who I know straight up would have known to bring pressure in those 2 games when Tim Banks didn't do it.
But would they have been as good in the other 11 games Tennessee played? I don't know. See, I really like John Chavis and respect him. I thought he did an outstanding job as defense coordinator. You know what he had trouble with? Quarterback draw.
He also had a lot of trouble with those screen passes at Notre Dame.
Well, he did. And then somebody came up with 3rd and Chavis or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the LSU game when they put in a backup quarterback, I think his name was Matt Mauck, and he ran about 13 quarterback draws, and Tennessee never stopped him. My point is, defensive coordinators aren't perfect. Neither are offensive coordinators. I think they're like quarterbacks. They all have a bad game. They all have something you wonder about. Why in the world didn't he do that? But I have to look over 13 games or 12 games or 14 or however many they play. So yeah, I didn't like what Banks did in 2 of the games, but boy, the other 11 games, I thought he did a really nice job.
I look back at John Chavis, and yes, outstanding job. I wouldn't call him elite because I felt like he would get out coached a couple of times a year. We mentioned the Notre Dame one, obviously the 2001 SEC championship game where he didn't adjust. Are we talking about a guy that's cut from the same cloth, a guy that's fundamentally sound, a guy that's going to do some really good things in Tim Banks, but maybe just get outfoxed a couple of times a year? Or the Georgia and Ohio State games more about talent?
Well, I definitely think the Ohio State game was about talent. Their receivers are a lot better than Georgia's receivers. And Carson Beck, if you give him all day to throw, is pretty good. But to my point about coordinators, Chip Kelly is revered as an offensive coordinator. How did he do against Michigan? He even admitted after the Michigan game he stunk, and he was hard-headed. And he kept trying to run against Michigan when he should have been throwing the football. So I just think there are times that coordinators, quarterbacks, whatever, just don't have good games. Is Banks going to call a great game in every game of the year? Probably not. Is he going to get beat by a team that's got 3 receivers like Ohio State with a quarterback that's hot? Yeah, probably. But I think, to me, there was a clear talent disparity in Tennessee and Ohio State. Still doesn't excuse Tennessee for never covering the drag route or covering it back out of a backfield. I mean, that to me is a coaching. But getting back to this, I don't know. I just don't know how many offensive or defensive coordinators you can point to and say that guy was great every game throughout the season. I just think that's rare.
That's fair. I guess I would say at least make an adjustment during the game. That to me is kind of the salvation. If you come out with a bad game plan and you make an adjustment at halftime or whenever, then kudos. You absolved yourself of a bad game plan. I guess that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, that's why I referenced the Georgia game.
Yeah.
Because Tennessee, to me, did not make the adjustments in the second half. I'm going to ignore the numbers from Pro Football Focus because I'm having trouble believing them.
Hey, man. By the way, did I tell you they called me one time and asked me if I would be interested in breaking down football for them? I'm like, guys, I'm a reporter. I don't pretend to know the X's and O's like some sort of former coach. So that just tells you a little something about Pro Football Focus.
So they hired an 8th grader instead. See,
he was probably better than I would have been.
Well, and my point, I'll go to this. And the reason I bring that up is, so I'm doing the Sunday morning show with Tim Irwin, and we're talking about the grades of the offensive line. And his naked eye view was way different from some Pro Football Focus ratings and rankings and how well they played, particular individuals. And so he said, what do they got, an 8th grader that's grading the offensive line? So that's why I mentioned 8th grade. he questioned the ability of some of the people that are doing this kind of work, and I think that's a fair question.
Well, my understanding, I'm not trying to rip anybody. Sorry, Caleb. My understanding is the business model is they put the best guys on the NFL because that's where the money is. Go ahead, Caleb.
Okay.
Yeah, and well, there's some things they just can't account for, particularly with blocking. There's certain, like, so much of blocking, particularly in the interior, is complementary blocking. So your grade may struggle because you're blocking at an angle and not actually picking up a man. Jerome Carvin did that all the time. So Jerome Carvin's grades were terrible, and I think we all thought Jerome Carvin was really good. Jimmy, how about this? If I'm with Tim Banks, if I'm being fair, because we brought up Chavis. One of the biggest red flags to me with Chavis was how long it took him to figure out offenses. It took him way too long to figure out Steve Spurrier. But we haven't seen that with Tim Banks yet. But if Tennessee goes into next year and elite quarterbacks are still torching him and he's not blitzing, don't we start to raise a red flag of, okay, why haven't you? You may not. It may have been wrong that you didn't adjust in a game, but now you're not adjusting year to year, and isn't that a red flag at that point?
It would be, yeah. And especially if it happens 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Yes, that I would agree with that.
Yeah, and so I think that was because I think we would all agree, right? That it took Chavis 4 years before he figured out the fun and gun and could slow it down.
Well, some teams never figured it out.
Yeah, but Chavis actually had the talent. Other teams didn't.
Well, you're right. They did have the talent. Their personnel in the 90s was outstanding on defense. You're right.
So with Tim Banks, let me just get like a big picture thing because we've kind of danced all around it. We talked about how he's good. We've talked about how he's struggled at times. I mean, where would you rate him among others? To me, he's in the top 10 percentile or so. I think he's right up there. I'm not ready to go overboard and say elite yet.
Well, I don't know how assistant coaches get nominated for assistant coach of the year, but he has been nominated for that more than once. And that tells me his peers, if it is the peers, think highly of him. But I've also talked to some other coaches, college coaches, who think he's really good. And this is interesting too. So we just know Clemson fired their defensive coordinator, and they got Tim Allen from Penn State to be their coordinator. So we'll see how much of an impact he makes at Clemson. But my deal is this. I don't think you just say, hey, we can find somebody better than Tim Banks, boom, snap your finger. No, I don't think it's that easy to do that. And I also think that he's a better coordinator now than he was the first year he was at Tennessee. Now, having said that, I thought Tennessee's personnel that first year was not very good on defense. That was one thing that hurt them because they had so many players that left the program in the portal.
It's funny you bring that up, and I want to get to that. Portions of the program brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. Again, rickterryjewelry.com. I felt like early with less talent, he was incredibly creative and risky at times in some of his defensive front twists and stunts and blitzes. I felt like this year he kind of thought he had it and played a little bit more vanilla. That's what I thought by watching with my eyeballs.
So I'll give you this one because he's retired, but I've had more than one coach say this to me. So I've known Mack Brown since he was the offensive coordinator at LSU in 1981, and I have talked with him a number of times. And he told me that if his offensive talent wasn't as good as the defense he was playing, he had to be more creative. He had to have a lot more reverses or different, just a different attack. He had to gamble. Okay, but if his offense was better than your defense, he could be more conservative, line up and just run at you because you couldn't stop him. I've had defensive coordinators that told me the same thing. If I got the defensive talent, I don't need to blitz a lot. If I got the defensive talent, I don't need to throw a whole lot of junk at a quarterback if my defense is better than your offense. So I think that's somewhat typical of coaches. If my talent's better than yours, I can be pretty vanilla and win anyway.
On that front, Jimmy, and we've asked this before, is Rodney Garner more important than Tim Banks as a coach for Tennessee because of the defensive line and the work he did?
Was Robin more important than Batman?
He wasn't in even the first movie, Jimmy. Come on. Are you going to play to my nerddom?
No, but wait, Tex Winter was more important than Phil Jackson on the Bulls.
They had 5 Robins. They only had 1 Bruce Wayne Batman.
Okay, well then I'll retract that statement. Question. So
Jimmy wasn't aware of Nightwing.
I think Rodney Garner is extremely important. I think he develops players. I like the way that he plays a lot of people as opposed to the offensive line, which doesn't develop talent like Rodney Garner does on defense. More important, how good of a defensive coordinator would Rodney Garner be? Or how good of a defensive coordinator is Tim Banks without Rodney Garner? That's a really good question. I don't have a great answer to that. But Garner's he's the best defensive line coach they've had over there since Dan Brooks. And so I'll say this. I don't think there's a better coach as a position coach on Tennessee's staff than Rodney Garner. But I'm hesitant to say he's more important than Tim Banks.
So let me ask you this. Banks closing in on that decision. He's going to stay at Tennessee. The other 2 coaches that are on expiring contracts are Willie Martinez and Mike Eckler. You think Tennessee will make a change there? Are they good?
I don't know. I'm not sure if they do. To be honest with you, I've not been a huge fan of Willie Martinez, but I thought this past year with a whole bunch of new bodies, they did a good job with McCoy. Gibson wasn't a new body, but I thought he played well. They got a lot out of Will Brooks, who was a walk-on. So I thought he had a pretty good year as a secondary coach. So I'm not sure they're going to make a move there. Eckler on special teams primarily. He's got tight ends. No, he doesn't have tight ends. What's his position?
Outside linebackers.
Outside linebacker.
Teams.
Well, good gravy. I could coach Arian Carter.
Well, Arian Carter's not that good in pass coverage. That concerns me a little bit.
That's true.
He's a great athlete, and I love the way he runs. He needs to get better in that regard. Special teams, I thought you were fine at kicker, at punter, your return game. I would give Eckler, to me, is an above-average coach on your staff.
Okay. I tell you what, let's take a quick break. Jimmy, I'm running a little bit late. Text me if you need to run. I apologize. Let's take a quick break, 2 minutes, and we're going to talk some keys to Tennessee getting Final Four ready, because I don't believe that's the case right now. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures, so much more. And I think they've got a baby. Congratulations, Zach. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates on Facebook. Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. Also want to thank the UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small business a wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. That is banksandjones.com. We're live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. As Matthew McConaughey would say, all right, off the hook.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Welcome back to the program as we broadcast live each and every weekday at 10 a.m. Four screens. We're going crazy. Caleb's having a good time. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. So, Jimmy, I know that you have a column coming up that really I just want to tease. I don't think we have quite time enough. I don't want to steal too much of your time, but it is some of the keys to Tennessee becoming a Final Four team, because they've been better than I thought they would be. But after the Florida game, I have trouble seeing a Final Four in their future. So your column will come out tomorrow morning, but if you can kind of tease that forward in what direction you're going for, we would love to hear it right now.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of things that I see from Tennessee that I think they need to improve upon. And I think it's big if they want to be a Final Four team. And one of them is Darling Stone Dubar has got to continue to be productive. He was outstanding at Texas. They need that. They need him for depth, and they need him for his offensive ability. So I think he's a big key. Here's another thing too. I think it's very difficult for a team to play at a Final Four level if two of your starters are not offensive threats. Akpora, he's going to score on an offensive rebound or a dunk on an alley-oop, right? Other than that, he has no moves.
And that's it.
Okay. Okay. Here's the other one. Meshach's got to pick it up. I see him driving into the lane, and then he gets 4 or 5 feet from the basket, and he looks to pass it to somebody. You got to go in there and cram it in. You got to make a layup. You got to be more of an offensive threat because teams are backing off of him. So if your offense is 3-on-5, that's not very good. So, and I don't see Akpora all of a sudden developing into an offensive threat other than put back rebounds and alley-oops. Meshach has got to gain some confidence, and he's got to be more productive on the offensive end to elevate Tennessee as a team.
All right, great stuff. I'm trying to figure out this comment. Did I say something referring to my testosterone? I don't remember that.
Oh, no, that's about you being all tough, about you, popping your shoulder back into place.
Oh, I thought maybe I said something about the bedroom or something.
Or playing in the cold. By the way, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on Steve Spurrier's talk that the college football playoffs should be indoors? Because I think all college football games should be indoors from here on out, and Dave thinks I'm soft.
Oh, I think it's going to be hard to have them all indoors. How are you going to do that?
I don't think
you don't have enough indoor stadiums. I'm fine with the first round games being on campus sites, because if you've won enough, then I think you kind of earn the right to have it there. No, I don't think there are enough bowl games enough stadiums to have all of them indoors.
I think every stadium should have a dome put on top of it now. I don't know why football's still played outside, but that's just me.
Well, you can play it outside in Miami.
Jimmy's appearance brought to you by National Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begins your fitness journey today. Begin it right now. It's down below, nfc1.com. And as for lowering my testosterone dose, I don't get dosed because I lift heavy weight, which keeps your testosterone up, and I do it at National Fitness Center. So mine's 1250 at 50 years old. Bam! Match that. Yes, I just was bragging, Jimmy.
I have no comment on that.
I mean, I had to ask lady, has anybody at 50 ever tested this high? She goes, actually, She goes, and she's, well, I asked her, I said, has anybody at 50 actually tested this high? And she goes, not since I've been here, sir. I was like, felt pretty good. Jimmy, I'm not going to tell you that. Right. That's right. It was the first day. It really helps me in the bedroom. Sleep. Does help your sleep. All right, Jimmy, have a fantastic day. I'll be in touch with you about some National Fitness Center, and we appreciate your time and working with us on what's been kind of a crazy day.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all have a great day.
Have a good one, Jimmy.
Love that guy, Jimmy Hyams. We just absolutely love his contributions, both on the show and it's funny, Caleb, because I got to know Jimmy in radio because nobody reads bylines. I mean, I read all of his stuff in the 90s, but nobody reads bylines. So I wasn't really sure. I was just a teenager, early 20s, and I got to know him in radio. And then he started writing for us. And I was like, man, he's not just a good writer. He's a great writer. So look forward to that column tomorrow. Now, what we want to start doing at the end of every program, we're going to give you a little recruiting love. How about that? And we think you'll enjoy it. And we're going to have one to watch. We'll end every show with this of a prospect, and it could be a transfer portal prospect or a high school prospect that you need to keep an eye on. Today it's brought to you by Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle available. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to do what you need. That's Work Trucks. Intent on offering the perfect trucks, and it's all about time. Work Trucks will put your truck together quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you. Get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, Work Trucks. Then Clayton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham, the entire inventory. Go to worktrucksllc.com. The truck that you have to have. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. So our one to watch today is a young man from North Carolina, and his name is Keyshawn Stansel, a 2026 prospect. We're thinking he plays defensive tackle, could be a boost for the Vols as soon as he's ready to play. And Tennessee didn't lose a terrible lot off of its defensive line from last year. They did lose Omari Thomas, who I thought was a very good player. They lost Omar Norman-Lott, who was a very good player. Elijah Simmons never hit his potential because of injuries. He would have been the best of the bunch. He would have been. I'm just telling you. And then Jason Jenkins, who didn't do a lot, transferred to Florida State. So how much more important is Stansel now, a four-star defensive line prospect from Clayton High School in Johnston County that has said he will soon visit the Vols? How important is this young man who's been to Knoxville 3 times in the past 4 months? He'll be on Tennessee's Junior Day on January the 25th.
I think he's very important, and I actually think this is about more than anything. It's not so much about. I mean, don't get me wrong, the quality of players and recruits matter, but I think one of the things Josh Heupel wants to do is just. I mean, this guy is a 4-star, obviously, so he'd be a huge pickup for Tennessee. But Heupel also wants to just take guys from North Carolina to build connections to other players in North Carolina, particularly with Bill Belichick out there right now recruiting as heavily as possible in the state. And, like you talked about recently, NIL boosters in North Carolina are probably willing to open up a few checkbooks for Bill Belichick. They got this guy named Michael Jordan, who I think will open up some dollars too.
We'll see. He's kind of stingy. When Tennessee has gone into North Carolina, they've had success. So they've gotten guys like James Pierce. They've gotten guys like David Sanders. They've gotten guys like Faison Brandon, Pierce was a 4-star edge rusher. Sanders, 5-star offensive tackle. And then Brandon is a 5-star quarterback. So they've gotten guys they've targeted. Now it's time to take the next step. And the next step is more numbers. So instead of 3 or 4, you're getting 7. Well, instead of actually 1 or 2 a year, you're getting 5 or 6. That's when you know that Tennessee's foothold in North Carolina is strong, significant, and perhaps the way it was back in the 90s when Tennessee's entire starting off the defensive line were from the Carolinas. And they wanted that.
Yes, exactly. That's a big part. And that's the part we got to point out is it's not just North Carolina. They need a pipeline into the Carolinas. And I mean, I'd almost honestly argue that South Carolina is more important than North Carolina, funny enough. But that, you know, I think they still right now they need to make sure they're building a pipeline into North Carolina, because you guys can call me crazy, but I think South Carolina is a state that's 2 schools they're about to implode. I think this past year was a flash in the pan for the Gamecocks. I don't think it's going to last.
I don't either.
So yeah, so I think Tennessee is going to eventually have an easy pipeline into the state. Clemson's on their way out still. So I think the biggest threat right now is Bill Belichick and North Carolina for Tennessee to have their pipeline into the Carolinas. But the goal, if you're Tennessee, is to be the premier school for the kids in the Carolinas. Now, again, I'm throwing this locational stuff out, but as NIL gets more and more embedded into the sport, we got to be honest, that's going to be the number one like determining factor of where kids go at this point. So we don't know how that's going to play out, but yes, they want that North Carolina pipeline.
Last look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun. And we've got some breaking news, actually, with one of the biggest names in the history of SEC football.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun, and Eye Care Optical at CCTI.
All right, Caleb. So breaking news that I want to get to, and this is pretty big time. Wow, I'm a little taken aback. I do want to remind everyone, we're so excited to have Ted Russell Ford Lincoln as part of the program. They're our new studio sponsor. So you're watching us live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. I'm getting a Bronco, no pressure. They gave me their cell phone number so I could check in, and I'm waiting for the perfect used Bronco to come in, the one that I like, the Outer Banks model. And talk about selection. I mean, I could have driven off that very day, but I just thought I'd wait a while. But they had at least 5 that fit what I was looking to spend and what I wanted. They considered an honor to serve their neighbors. They're so committed to providing exceptional service. It's just unbelievable. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, please stop in today, support our sponsors. They're on Kingston Pike. They're on Parkside Drive, the exclusive vehicle and studio sponsor, vehicle provider, I should say, of Off the Hook Sports. They're just absolutely unbelievable. And selection, my goodness, they absolutely have it. Again, Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, and they are on Parkside Drive and also Kingston Pike. Breaking news with one of the biggest names in the history of the SEC, as we're going to go a little bit long today because we can't miss out on this one. Is that okay with you, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what it is. You're having me on my on the edge of my seat.
Oh, it's a big one. That we're live again. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible for camping, tailgating. The options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep boop beep bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300, or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Breaking news. Tim Tebow had sex.
Oh, I knew that yesterday. I knew about that yesterday. Okay.
Tim Tebow is having a baby, so good for him. He closed the deal, so to speak. I didn't know he was married.
He got married, I believe, in 2020. Let's see. I'm looking up the year he got married, but it was yes. He got married a few years ago, I believe. Yeah, they got married in 2020.
And I believe Tim Tebow was the only man to ever, to this day or before that, bro hug me that I'd never met. Like a hug. Like we were brothers that hadn't seen each other since last Christmas or something. It was awkward.
That is kind of.
And then you know what happened right after that?
What?
He sat down and did it in the radio room, not the main room at SEC Media Days. And that's when, what's his name? His name suddenly escapes me. Ask him if he was a virgin or not.
Oh, Clay Travis when he asked him if he was a virgin?
Yes, in front of everybody, which was stupid and selfish, and you want to make a spectacle of yourself, because if you really want to write that, it is newsworthy because the way he promoted Christianity, you pull him aside so it's your own exclusive. But when you, and he would have done that, but when you do it in front of everybody, it's everybody's, and you're basically just wanting to make a spectacle out of yourself. But that's all for naught now, because Tim Tebow has had sex and will have a baby. Good for you, Tim. Hope you enjoyed it.
Tim Tebow's my age, just so you know. We were born the same year, 1988. He got married in 2020. Do we really believe he made it to 30 as a virgin?
I was actually told by somebody very close to him that that's a total fact.
I mean, I believe it. I believe it's possibly true, but like, man, he made it to 32.
How long did you make it?
I'm not going to talk about that.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Oh, HR's calling me. We're live from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Turn your notifications on. Big announcements coming down the pike. Again, support our sponsors. That's why we're here. No subscription fee. And I'll tell you how you can win great prizes tomorrow once I can get this soundboard hooked up. It's like days of our lives around here. Thank you, Caleb. Fantastic job, sir. That was one heck of a show. So have a blessed day, everyone. Be kind to others. And remember, Off the Hook Sports, we're live on YouTube at 10 o'clock weekdays. You can check it out anytime, wherever you podcast. Leave us a review, like, and subscribe. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume